Jam Vishnu Pad Padamamsa Parajak Charya Astrata Satashishimad Shringa Guru Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Ananti Kodi Vaishnavina Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Paramsiko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shyamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai New Dwarka Dham Ki Jai The Divine Lordship Shri Shri Rukmini Dwarkadish Ki Jai The Divine Lordship Shri Shri Jagannath Baldev Shrimati Subhadra Ki Jai The Divine Lordship Shri Shri Gornitai Ki Jai Jamunamai Gangamai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai Transcendental Prasadam Distribution Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol All glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna All glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna All glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the second canto, chapter 7, Scheduled Incarnations with Specific Functions. We're on verse 12 today. And as you can see, we're discussing Matsyaha. Matsyo Yuganta Samaye Manu no Falabda Matsyo Yuganta Samaye Manu no Palambda Ksoni Mayo Nikila Jiva Nikaya Keto Ksoni Mayo Nikila Jiva Nakaya Keto Vishram Sitan Urubaye Salile Mukhan Me Vishram Sitan Urubaye Salile Mukhan Me Adaya Tatra Vijahara Ha Veda Margan Adaya Tatra Vihara Hada Veda Margan Macho Yuganta Samaye Manu no Palabda Ksoni Mayo Nikila Jiva Nakaya Keta Vishram Sitan Urubaye Salile Mukhan Me Adaya Tatra Vihara Ha Veda Margan. Please chant. Vaishnavis, Macho Yukanta Samaye Manupalabhata Soni Mayo Nikila Jiva Nakaya Keta Vishram Sitanu Dubaye Saline Mukhanme Vaishnavis, Nedamane Matsya, incarnation of the fish. Yuganta, at the end of the millennium. Samaye, at the time of. Manuna, the would-be Vaishvasvata Manu. Upalabdha, seen. Soni Maya, up to the earthly planets. Nikila, all. Jiva, living entities. Nakaya Keta, shelter for. Vishram Sitan, emanating from. Uru, great. Baye, out of fear. Salile, in the water. Mukhat, from the mouth. Me, mine. Adaya, having taken to. Tatra, there. Vijara, enjoyed. Ha, certainly. Veda Margan, all the Vedas. Translation. At the end of the millennium, the would-be Vaivavasta Manu of the name Satyavrata would see the Lord in the fish incarnation is the shelter of all kinds of living entities, up to those in the earthly planets. Because of my fear of the vast water at the end of the millennium, the Vedas come out of my Brahma's mouth. And the Lord enjoys those vast waters and protects the Vedas. Purport. During one day of Brahma, there are 14 Manus. And at the end of each Manu, there is devastation up to the earthly planets. And the vast water is fearful even to Brahma. So in the beginning of the would-be Vaivavasta Manu, such devastation would be seen by him. There would be many other incidents also, such as the killing of the famous Sankasura. This foretelling is by the past experience of Brahmaji, who knew that in that fearful, devastating scene, the Vedas would come out of his mouth. But the Lord in his fish incarnation not only would save all living entities, namely the demigods, animals, men, and great sages, but also save the Vedas. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksusunmilitamina Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Upakadamayam Dadanti Swapadantikam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakopa Tubhischa Kripasindu Bhyavicha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So the verse again. At the end of the millennium, the would-be Vaivavasta Manu of the name Satyavrata would see that the Lord in the fish incarnation is the shelter of all kinds of living entities, up to those in the earthly planets. Because of my fear of the vast water at the end of the millennium, the Vedas came out of my mouth, and the Lord enjoys those vast waters and protects the Vedas. So there's a nice chapter describing this Matsya incarnation, and that's in the 8th canto. But I'd like to mention something here. Today is such an ideal time to perform this hearing and being absorbed in the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, especially on Ekadasi. It's a wonderful day where we try to decrease our bodily activities and increase our hearing and chanting in the pastimes of the Lord. And just by hearing, describing, coming in contact somehow with this transcendental activities, this potency will act. And the benefit of getting in contact with this can affect everyone in the cosmic creation. Actually, it's described that the creation has 2 purposes. One is to fulfill that tantrum we had to try to enjoy separately from Krishna. So Krishna relentlessly gives us this illusion to think that we're enjoying separately. It's like the water in the desert. There's no happiness. Just like in the water, in the desert there's no water, in the mature world there's no happiness. But sense gratification is like the mirage in the desert. There's nothing really there. So we have to perform this remedial measure of the second part is to suffer in the mature world, birth, death, old age, and disease. But then the thoughtful will ask, well, who am I? Why am I suffering? And this is why the Vedas are here. This is the second purpose of creation, is to give us this knowledge to get out of here. And in this pastime, we'll see with this beautiful incarnation of Krishna, he comes to protect the Vedas. And in many other incarnations, even in the previous incarnation we read about, also, it's all about saving the Vedas. So that's so nice. And then there's a nice prayer, inquiry by Maharaj Parikshit in the 24th chapter of the 8th canto. This is actually the end of the 8th canto. And Maharaj Parikshit is asking Sukadeva Goswami. He's saying that Hari is eternally situated in his transcendental position, but yet he descends in this mature world and manifests himself in various incarnations. And his first incarnation is the fish. And so he's asking Sukadeva Goswami, please explain to me about this incarnation. And then in another verse there to that chapter, he says, what's the purpose for that Supreme Personality guided, except in this abominable form of a fish, exactly as an ordinary being accepts different bodily forms under the laws of karma? He said the form of a fish is certainly condemned and full of terrible pain. So he's asking, what's the purpose of this incarnation? Kindly explain this to us. Because if we hear about the pastimes of the auspicious Lord, then it's auspicious for everyone who hears it. So now we see, actually, anybody's familiar with the book Moby Dick by Herman Melville? And in that book, he actually refers to this Hindu myth of the incarnation of Vishnu as a big whale. So that was what his actual opinion was. But for us, both Vishnu and Matsya are real. And in this class, we'll show that it's not only real, but we can actually take part in the pastimes of the Lord. So that's very important. Even in, we see in the Christian, history, and actually other civilizations, they claim that there was a great flood that took place in the distant past. And they say also that God sent this flood to destroy humankind as an act of divine retribution. Man becoming so depraved that God wanted to start over. So we see here Noah's Ark. It was built for the flood in the biblical story. And it's similar to this pastime of Matsya incarnation as a fish appearing to King Satyavrata. And that took place in Satya Yuga. And the fish incarnation told the king, he said that the world's going to end in 7 days by an inundation of water. So he told the king what to do. So we see the similarities. Actually, we see that this Noah's Ark was built. But actually, in our pastime, we're going to see that Krishna actually built the ark for King Satyavrata. And not only that, he came in that form to direct it and to protect it. So in the Shrutis, it's described there. There's one verse. It says, I am Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. I am Matsya, Kurma, Vraha, Narshinga, Vamana, the three Ramas, Ramachandra, Parshuram, and Balaram, Krishna, Buddha, and Kalki. Immeasurable and unlimited, I appear in hundreds and thousands of forms, none of which ever takes birth or dies. These forms of mine are not bound by ignorance, nor do they have to strive for liberation. They are all complete, free from old age, immortal, supreme, and supremely blissful. So this is really nice how it shows the different incarnations of Krishna, that they're all just as powerful. And here's another verse. This is from the Brihat Bhagavatamrita. In the Lord's own appearances on earth, he shows similar variety and equality. The Lord's own forms are the shelter and the treasure of the earth. Among them are Narayan and Dattatreya and Parshara, the son of Jamadagni, and Kapila. There are those who playfully assume the appearance of deities, and those such as Vishnu and Yagneshvara, whom you have seen on Swargaloka and other higher planets. There are such various incarnations as Matsya, Kurma, Mahavraha, Sriman Nrsinga, and Vamana. Each of these forms of the Lord has its own activities and names, yet all of them are full of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Though manifesting variety in substance, they are eternally one. So there's a very nice purport given in that book. But let's see if I could just mention a few things here. Talks about what's very nice. So he mentions there that the Lord comes in this very wonderful form as the deity. Playfully comes as the deity, which is so nicely, which we'll discuss also. So we'll go on. So here during the Chakshusa Manvantara, there's this king. He was actually a great devotee of Krishna. His name was Shatarata. And he performed austerities simply by subsisting on water. And then it's described that later, actually, he became the son of Vivishvan, who is the king of the sun planet. And then he was known as Shraddhadev in that time. I guess that's what he is now. So after that, he was given the post of Manu. So one day, we see here, the king was performing his austerities, and he was offering water on the bank of the river Kritamala. And a small fish appeared in the palms of his hands. He was like offering water back. And this small fish appeared in his palms. And then the king just threw the fish back in the water, And with an appealing voice, that fish actually began to speak to the king. And he said, "My dear king, protector of the poor, why are you throwing me in the water of the river, where there are other aquatics who can kill me? I'm very afraid of them." So the king, to please himself, he didn't know that the fish was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he decided with great pleasure to serve him and to give him protection. So here's an example of someone performing Agyata Sukriti. So he wanted to show his mercy. He didn't know that he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he was favored by the Supreme. And simply by this service, whether knowingly or unknowingly, it never goes in vain. So he was very, very fortunate king. So the merciful king, he decided to move the little fish to a big water jug, and made that his residence. But in the night, that fish grew so much that he couldn't even move his body comfortably. And then he spoke to the king and he said, "My dear king, I don't like living in this water pot. It's so difficult. I can't even move. Can you put me in another place? Please find some reservoir where I can live comfortably." So then he took the fish out of the water pot and put him in a well. And then in a moment, the fish actually grew the length to like 4 or 5 feet. And then the fish said, "My dear king, the reservoir water is not fit for me. I'm not happy here. Please give me another extensive pool of water, because I've taken shelter of you." So then the king, he took him to a well. No, he took him to the gigantic, like a big river. I guess he took him to the Ganges or wherever. And still he kept growing and growing. And finally, he said, "Please put me somewhere else in a big lake where the water doesn't reduce." So then eventually the king put him in a huge reservoir of water, but then that proved insignificant. So then the king at last threw him in the ocean. And while he was being thrown in the ocean, the fish said, "Oh, hero, in this ocean, there's very powerful, dangerous sharks, and they're going to eat me. Why did you throw me in this place?" But then after hearing these sweet words from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the king said, "My dear sir, who are you? You're bewildering me. I've never seen anybody this big before, or a fish like this. You expanded yourself hundreds of miles, covering rivers and huge waters like the ocean. I've never heard of such an aquatic animal." And then he realized, he says, "Actually, you're certainly the inexhaustible Supreme Personality of Godhead. And to show your mercy on all living entities, you've assumed this form of a great aquatic." So he says, in that, there's a nice verse in that chapter. He offers this, he says, "O my Lord, Master of Creation, Maintenance and Annihilation, O best of enjoyers, Lord Vishnu, you are the leader and destination of surrendered devotees. Therefore he offers my respectful obeisances." And he tells him how you've appeared for the welfare of all living entities. And therefore tell me, what is your purpose for coming in this form of a fish? And he's describing him how he's beautiful eyes and, like this. So Satyavrata was speaking very nicely of the fish. And then the Supreme Personality of Godhead said in this form, he said, "O king, who can subdue your enemies, on the 7th day from today, the 3 worlds, Bhu, Bhuvaha, and Swaha, will be merged into the water of inundation. When all the 3 worlds merge into the water, a large boat sent by me will appear before you. Thereafter, O king, you shall collect all types of herbs and seeds and load them on the great boat. Then, accompanied by the 7 rishis and surrounded by all kinds of living entities, you shall get aboard that boat. And without moroseness, you shall easily travel with your companions on the ocean of inundation." So, and the only illumination they would have was the illumination from the sages' bodies. That's the only illumination they would have. So that's similar to the Noah's Ark, how they were collecting different animals and things and saving them from the flood. So He says, pulling the boat with you and all the rishis in it, O king, I shall travel in the water of devastation until the night of Brahma's slumber is over. So in the purport there, Prabhupada describes that actually this didn't take place in the night of Lord Brahma. It actually took place during the day. And what happened is Lord Brahma became sleepy. So he took a little snap. And what happens when Lord Brahma goes to sleep? There's devastation. So this is actually by Krishna's arrangement because he wanted to show this king, Shatarata, how inundation affects things and how he can save this thing. So that's so nicely described there. So he said by his illusory energy, the Supreme Person wanted to show Shatarata the effects of devastation. And then the Lord, actually, while they're traveling, he says that you would be thoroughly advised and favored by me, because of your inquiries, everything about my glories, which are known as Padam Brahma, will be manifest within your heart. Thus you'll know everything about me. So as they're traveling, he's enlightening them. So that's so nice. So then the fish disappeared, and then the king just waited for him to reappear. And then as the Lord described, he did send the boat, and there's the boat that came. And he was meditating on that fish form of the Lord, and then these huge clouds came and poured incessant water, swelled the oceans, and then it began to inundate the land and the entire world. And then as he was remembering this matcha form, this boat came to him, and then he collected all the things that the Lord asked, and then the sages and saintly brahmanas, they all got aboard the boat. So this is there. And then as he was meditating and he boarded the boat, Krishna appeared again as this golden fish. And the fish had one horn. I guess how long it was. It was 8 million miles long. So yeah, and no, the fish's length. It had one horn, but the length of the fish was that long. So he followed the instructions that was given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he anchored the boat to the fish's horn. He used the serpent Vasuki as a rope. And then he began to offer these wonderful prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And maybe we'll just read a few of those, which are very nice. And here's one. He says, by the grace of the Lord, those who have lost their self-knowledge since time immemorial, and who because of this ignorance are involved in material, conditional life of miseries, obtaining the chance to meet the Lord's devotee, I accept that Supreme Personality Godhead as the Supreme Spiritual Master. So this is a really important point. And Prabhupada says in the purport there that such a person may appear to be an ordinary human being, but because he acts on behalf of the Supreme Personality Godhead, the Supreme Spiritual Master, he is not to be neglected as ordinary. So if one acts on behalf of the Supreme Personality Godhead, he's understood to be as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Like that verse, Sakshat Haritwena. And he talks about people trying to become happy in the material world, how they're foolish, and they're considered to be very foolish because they're sinful, and they're full of lust, and all these things are they're very dirty. So, and he says here, neither all the demigods nor so-called gurus, nor all other people, either independently or together, can offer mercy that equals even 1/10,000th of yours. Therefore, I wish to take shelter at your lotus feet. So he talks about blind men leading other blind men, and that's what it is if you follow some kind of rascal fool who's so-called guru, instructing his disciples about economic development, sense gratification, and these things. There's actually gurus that do that. And Prabhupada writes in the purport that actually there are gurus that advises one to meditate in such a way that your intelligence will increase, and then you'll keep your body fit for sense gratification. Actually, there's gurus that actually advise that. He mentions that in the purport, and even gurus that advise sex is the ultimate goal of life. So these are all the rascal gurus that he's talking about. So in that purport there, Prabhupada says, The living entity, being part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has the birthright to a position in Vaikuntha, or the spiritual world where there is no anxiety. Therefore, one should follow the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Tvakta deham punarjanma naiti mameti sarjuna. After giving it the body, you return back home, back to Godhead. So, Prabhupada mentions there that as a spiritual person, such a devotee returns to the Personality of Godhead and plays and dances with him. That's the ultimate goal of the Lord of life. And then in another purport, Srila Prabhupada, actually the next verse, in that purport, Srila Prabhupada says something very similar. He says, by mental speculation, one cannot understand that one is not the body, but a spirit soul. But unless one engages in devotional service, the real purpose of life is never fulfilled. The real purpose of life is to go back home, back to Godhead, and live with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, play with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, dance with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and eat with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So these are different types of ananda, spiritual happiness that we can experience, this variegatedness in the spiritual world. So that's if we follow these instructions, then we'll be able to go back home, back to Godhead. So there's other prayers, and we don't have time to read them all, but they're wonderful. But I'd like to just mention two more of those verses, which says here that this story concerning the great king Satyvrata and the fish incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, is a great transcendental narration. Anyone who hears it is delivered from the reactions of sinful life. One who narrates this description of the Matsya incarnation and King Satyvrata will certainly have all his ambitions fulfilled, and he will undoubtedly return home, back to Godhead. So as we mentioned, Krishna comes in all these different forms, and they're one and equal. So we see at the bottom there is Lord Chaitanya. And it's very interesting, at the end of this chapter of the Matsya incarnation in the 8th canto, Srila Prabhupada finished that, and he mentions this, that it has been finished in our New Delhi Center in 1976 on Radhastami. And he says that I am attempting to present Srimad Bhagavatam in the English language by the order of my spiritual master, Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And by his grace, the work translation is gradually progressing, and the European American devotees who have joined the Krishna consciousness movement are helping me considerably. Thus, we have expectations to finish the great task before my passing away. Oh, glory to Shri Guru Gauranga. So we see Srila Prabhupada tirelessly attempted to distribute this transcendental knowledge, and it's unadulterated, and he demonstrated this throughout his life. In his Vrindavan days, he struggled to write and print and distribute his Back to Godhead magazine. And after like 11 or 12 issues, he just couldn't afford to do it anymore. He'd go out and present this knowledge as it is. He didn't compromise the truth. But many other so-called gurus were out there, and they were getting sponsors and everything because they were watering down the philosophy of impersonalism and so many things. But Srila Prabhupada, he didn't budge. So therefore, he wasn't selling very many. But because he was speaking against all these bogus gurus and things. He was actually telling the truth. But so we also have an opportunity to take part in the Leela of the Lord by this process of Sankirtan, Jagya. So there's these two things, the holy name and distribution of this knowledge. So Lord Chaitanya and his Sankirtan mission, he's preparing people to understand the Vedas. So this is why the Lord always comes to protect the Vedas, because by this chanting process and making this knowledge available to people in general, then the purpose of creation can be experienced. So it's a compassion on the part of the Lord and his devotees that we're able to take part in this movement and awaken our divine consciousness. So this book distribution is a core part of Srila Prabhupada's mission, and it's actually the Leela of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He spoke this transcendent knowledge and he entrusted it to his most intimate disciples. We know the 6 Goswamis. They wrote all these books on the order of Lord Chaitanya. And then Jiva Goswami trained up these 3 great devotees, Srinivasacharya, Narottama Das Thakur, and Shamananda. And he sent them out on book distribution, on a bullock cart. So that's our line. And actually we see Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he started the printing books. And Bhaktisiddhanta also was printing many books. And this was Srila Prabhupada's mood of printing books and this hearing and chanting. And he established, Srimad Bhagavatam, that's what we're hearing now. He established deity worship. And he did this Harinam Sankirtan. We have, we're actually living in the holy places. We're serving the devotees. Prabhupada established these 5 most potent, important devotional activities that we're doing here right now. So this is what we have, is we have this mercy handed down here. And if we just surrender to it, then we will take advantage. And as we mentioned, the Lord's own forms are the shelter and the treasure of the earth. And there are those who playfully assume the appearance of the deities. That's what we have right here. Rukmini Dwarkadish is one of those incarnations. So counted among the avatars he displays in the material realm are his deity forms. In different corners of the universe, he appears as innumerable deities, each with its own personality. Like Sankarshan in Lavrita Sri Jagannath in Purushottama Kshetra, Sri Raghunath in Rangapuri, and Rukmini Dwarkadish in New Dwarka. So just to mention a few. So as a spiritual person, such a devotee returns to the personality guided and plays and dances with him. That's the ultimate goal of life. So here are Krishna examples of, even Lord Chaitanya came to witness this playfulness. Krishna came himself to try to taste that. So the real purpose of life is to go back home, back to Godhead, and live with the Supreme Personality Godhead, play with the Supreme Personality Godhead, dance with the Supreme Personality Godhead, and eat with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then one can fulfill the ultimate goal of life by engaging in devotional service to the Lord. Then the Lord will give one proper instructions on how to go back home, back to Godhead. So this is, if we can just see just a slight attempt at devotional service, even knowingly or unknowingly, it's a permanent asset. So we're so fortunate to have this opportunity to engage in devotional service. So I'd like to end there. We have like a minute for a comment or question. Yes, Brigupati Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Nice class. Where did the pastime take place? Because, to start off with, you got King Satyavrata, and he's possibly there on earth. He's dealing with a small fish, but as you mentioned, by the end of the whole thing, Matsya had expanded up to 8 million miles. So you can't fit him here on earth. So where exactly did the pastime take place?
It's described, it was in the Chakshusa Manvantara, so it was in Satya Yuga. And he was described here on the bank of the river Kritamala.
To start off with.
That's where he was, yeah.
But like, for instance, if you put him in the ocean, you can't put an 8 million mile long fish in an ocean here on Earth.
Yeah.
So,
no, but he didn't expand that many big until the devastation. But he just got bigger and bigger just to show the king that, I'm not an ordinary fish. But then he disappeared until he said in 7 days, then there's going to be the end of the world. So at that time, I'll come back. So when he came back, he was like that long, millions of miles long. Yeah. So, thank you. Any other? Yes, Prabhu.
Just a quick question I had, because you were saying that Satyavrata eventually becomes the son of Vivaswan, the sun god, correct? Is that what you said?
Yes.
And then you said, well, he's probably there right now.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I think so. Because Prabhupada says in today's verse.
Yeah, that's what I had a question.
Yeah. He said that it would be Vivivashtra Manu.
So that means he's Manu right now.
Yeah. Then after that, it became Manu. Yeah.
Okay. And just one quick question. In the purport, it says there would be many other incidents also, such as the killing of the famous Shankasura. The foretelling is by the past experience of Brahmaji, who knew that in that fearful, devastating scene, the Vedas would come out of his mouth. So does that mean that this happens every day of Brahma, that Matsya comes? So from Brahma's past experience, from his previous day, he knew that this was going to happen? Is that what that means?
Yeah, he has previous experiences of all these things happening. But it's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam that Matsya appeared in 2 different times. One to kill the demon. What's the demon's name? I forget. What's the name of the incarnation of Krishna as a horse? Hayagriva. So there was a demon named Hayagriva also. So this demon stole the Vedas from Brahma at that time. And he came as Matsya to kill that demon and give the Vedas back. And then this time we're talking about when he appeared before Shatyavrata to protect him and the sages and all the living entities, and to distribute and to also protect the Vedas. So, yeah, he came twice, and then Kurma came twice, and I think there's an explanation of Rahadev came like 5 times. There's 5 different times. It's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah. So yeah, thank you. Okay, well thank you for your kind attention. All glories to Srimad Bhagavatam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.